Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have Josh Painter in the house. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. And I just want to point out that you have the very best podcast intro music that I've heard, man.
Dude, it's funny that I've rarely told this story. So I was at a real estate conference. I had thought about a podcast for like 3 years. And when I was at the real estate conference, everybody spoke to had a podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I need a podcast. And so me and another guy were texting back and forth with this guy I knew who was a podcast producer. We came up with a name that night. I flew back. I got the music on the flight back. And then we started recording the next day, and then released it 2 weeks later. And now we're, 450 plus, episodes. But that music, I still love that music to this day.
Yeah. No, good for you.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's royalty free.
Yeah, royalty
something you
free.
found. Yeah,
I found
those are the best.
And he was sending me back and forth, and I was like, wait, I don't like that. Wait, I really like that. And then we took it, and it's we'll get into your story in just a second. I think one of the things that have served me in my life, because I've got a lot going on, is that I try not to overthink something. I just try to start. I think that at the end of the day, you're going to find more out in the process of doing something than trying to figure it out.
Totally. Yep.
I love it. So I want, a little bit about you. You could start your story wherever you want, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. I guess I'll start at the end. I wrote a book, and it's coming out. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but the book is coming out tomorrow. So that tells me that when this podcast comes out, it will be
here's
available.
The deal. Because I want to support the book, it'll be coming out next Wednesday now.
There you go. So that's the end of the story. The beginning starts. I mean, there's kind of two. I can't tell one turning point without telling the other, right? So I mean, it's easy to say, oh, my turning point was at 30. That's when I stopped living a life that I thought others expected of me.
Okay.
But I really can't tell that without saying that all started at 17 when I got my girlfriend pregnant in high school. So that's where the story starts, man. That's where shit got real. And I quickly felt like I needed to grow up and kind of, I started this life that I think that I started this life that I felt that was expected of you. And, someone asked me the other day, well, who expected that? And I was kind of drew a blank. I was like, I guess nobody. I guess it was just something I thought others expected. I thought you were supposed to do certain things, right? Like, oh, she's pregnant. I guess we're supposed to get married. And I guess now I need to go get a full-time job. And now I need to rent an apartment. And now I need to get a credit card and do all these adult things, right? And so I kind of lived that life until I was 30. Yeah.
So shocking. At 17 years old, my parents got divorced, and that's when I started abusing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 30 was when I got my life together somewhat, and started selling off assets to start investing in real estate.
Yeah.
And 36 was when I got sober. And so the similarities to that situation is extremely interesting, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely want to talk about, getting pregnant that young in that life. But I'll be honest, that 30 marker that you put, stop living other people's life, is very intriguing to me, because I think that's the genesis to, basically what's holding most people back. So I can imagine getting somebody pregnant and then having to tell your parents was probably more the harder thing than anything out of that kind of situation.
Yeah, it's funny. I stressed about it for weeks, but I never got to tell them about it because her and I had made this plan that we were both going to tell our parents at the same time, and then somehow her mom just looked at her and was like, "You're pregnant."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then she like just instantly confessed everything, and then I was at work, and I think I think her parents called my parents, so I kind of got off easy in a sense because I was like, "Oh shit, this is happening," right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I stressed about that for a long time, man. Yeah,
So what kind of happened as you're forced to grow up, super
yeah,
quick, kind of like,
yeah.
walk us through what happened.
So I graduated high school early because I quickly realized that um, there was no use being in school at that point. I remember walking up and just saying, like, what do I got to do to get out of here? And they said, well, you got enough credits. Like, if you just come talk to this dude and do a book report every week or some shit, you'll be done in like a month or two. And I said, all
Mhm.
right, cool. And I just did that. And meanwhile, I just got a full-time job, right? It was like restaurant management. And then I got this government job. And then um, I got, so I mean, I found out at 21 that the sheriff's department was hiring for corrections officers, and not really knowing much about that, it sounded interesting to me. I knew there was benefits. I knew, there was some good time off, and so I thought like, hey, I'll give this a try. I did that for 5 years, and so that would put me right around, I would say 25, 26 at that point. And so 5 years in, working in a jail very much feels like being in jail. Tell everyone, there's some kind of certain environment around keeping grown men in cages and working 12-hour shifts. In the wintertime, you wake up, the sun's not out, and then you get off work and the sun's no longer out. And so you go 5, 6 days of that, because then you pick up overtime shifts. Um, your circadian rhythm just gets thrown all out of whack. And then add to that, every 3 months you're changing from day shift to night shift. So um, I was just all messed up, I think, just like sleep wise and health wise. And I just remember thinking, like, I can't do like 25 more years of this. I got to get out. And that's when I kind of stumbled into real estate.
Mhm.
This was 2005, so things were going very well at that time.
Mhm.
Started doing mortgage loans, but 2007 hit, did not have enough runway to sustain me through that crash. So 2007 is kind of when I started what I call the trifecta of bad credit, right? I filed for bankruptcy. And since I couldn't afford my bills, I also lost a house. And then early '08 is when I completed the trifecta with a divorce. So,
Okay.
and that was also 2008 was when I turned 30.
Uh-huh.
So I remember waking up at 30 and just really thinking like, if I don't do something different, then time is flying, and before I know it, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be 40, and nothing's gonna have changed.
Mhm.
And I'll, as they say, I'll die having never lived. So
Mhm.
30 was kind of the catalyst. All of that happening.
Well, what's interesting is what people don't know, because I've blown up my life about 7 times, is that there's also some poetic greatness to blowing up your life and having those things cascade, because you get to leave behind what you don't want.
Yeah,
Like if it's
100%.
if it's that bad, it's like kind of, you're just kind of like, well, there's only ready to go up from here, right?
Yeah.
And so you had kind of gotten to real estate, and then like the market went down, and you filed for bankruptcy, you got divorced, and everything. What kind of started? What was the seed that kind of started you back on the upward trajectory?
So it's 2000. It's the beginning of 2008. I'm still doing mortgage loans. If I rewind a little bit, late 2007, I take on a full-time job just to make ends meet, and I'm still trying to get loans going. This was in that weird time where sellers thought their home was worth what it was the year before, and buyers knew that that shit was going to be worth less in a month. From
Mhm.
every month, it was going to be going down, right? So it was like a standstill. And there was just this period where nothing was moving. I shouldn't say nothing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so fast forward into '08, that's when the banks started dropping foreclosures on the market. And that's when people that couldn't buy a home were starting to see these new prices that they could afford, right? And so, 2008, I'm grinding, I'm doing this loan, and the guy's buying a house for 150,000 in Southern California, which is just absurd at this point right now. But he's putting 50% down, so the loan amount 75 grand. It takes 3 months to close this deal because the bank just doesn't know what hit them, and they're not signing paperwork, and they're just dragging their feet. So I'm extending this rate lock over and over and over again, which, you know, lenders usually eat that. So at the end of the day, I think I made $400 on this loan. I call the real estate agent because I want to congratulate her. Hey, we finally closed this deal, and she just kind of seemed like whatever. And I just remember thinking, like, I think I said, "Aren't you excited?" And something got her to say, "Yeah, I mean, this wasn't really a big deal for me. I think I only made $4,000 on this deal." And so that either that day or the next day, I just was like, dude, I'm on the wrong side of this. I did way more work. I did more hand holding. I mean, I just became friends with this client. So I already had my real estate license from doing loans. So I drove to a real estate office, said, what do I need to do? I want to sign up, signed the paperwork. The next day, I went to the board and bought some generic open house signs. They just said bank owned open house. I had just joined a real estate office. I said, who's got a bank owned home I can hold open? I found one. I put up these signs all over the place. I had about 40 people come into my open house on a weekday. I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. The funny thing is, I don't know if I knew it at the time, but it was right by a school. And so I had all these parents coming in, they were just waiting for their kids to get out of school. So I had 40 people come through. I ended up writing an offer on the home that day. Now, the offer didn't get accepted, but I just remember at the end of the day thinking, if I just do this 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, like there's no way that I'm not going to sell one house a month. So, I kept at it. I went through this period during this transition where, once again, I was 2 to 3 months behind on my rent, behind on my bills. Borrowed a little money from my parents. Right before that, I had what I kind of call like debit card roulette, where I was down to like the last $60 in my account. And I remember I needed gas in my truck to show some houses to a buyer, but I also needed $60 cash because I didn't have any food in the fridge. So what I did was I went to the gas pump, put the card in, put $60 worth of gas in my truck, and then I jumped in my truck and raced to the ATM and withdrew the $60 cash before the charge went through. Because at this point, man, you just don't care about non-sufficient fee charges. Those mean nothing to you, right? It's just a red number on your bank account instead. So, yeah, I went through that, man. I was, like I said, a few months behind. I think the only reason I didn't get evicted is because my landlord was also a real estate agent, so she must have known what was going on with things. So, but man, I kept at that. I kept doing open houses. I started posting the bank-owned open houses that were in my office on Craigslist because those agents just didn't care about marketing them at all. So I was getting buyer calls and showing those. And then I was just going to like apartment complexes and just flyering them, man. Like I wouldn't even put any prices or anything. I would just put a picture of a house, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,200 square feet. This is what your payment would be, because house prices were so low at that point. The payment was often less than the rent. And so those three things, I mean, I would say within 3 to 4 months, by like late September, October, of '08, I was completely caught up on everything, and life was starting to become good.
And it's funny that you say, like, at that point, like the little red lines in your account don't really matter. You're obviously having conversations with yourself, right? Trying
Right.
to believe that you're going to get through this is there any things that can stick out in your brain that you remember those like moments or a conversation you had with yourself driving to a client's house, just needing it to close, but not trying to be desperate?
Yeah, I remember thinking like, okay, other people are doing this, and so that's the only evidence that I need to know that this can be done. Yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, that that feeling of like, oh, I really hope they love this house, right? Please buy this. This one needs to close. I mean, oh my god, dude, one of those first ones, I mean, almost didn't even close. I mean, like the bank wanted to cancel on the buyer because they weren't using the lender that they thought they were going to use. And I mean, we got into it with the bank's asset manager, and he said, if this doesn't close tomorrow, we're pulling the plug, to the point that I drove the docks like 2 hours just
Hmm.
to make sure here they are,
Hmm. Hmm.
closed today.
Hmm.
I mean, one more day and it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it's a feeling of desperation and inspiration at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like to me like you didn't let your pride get in the way.
Not at all. No.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
pride at that point is so low. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm willing to do what's necessary. Like one of my favorite movies is Catch Me If You Can, and he tells the story about the two mice in the bucket,
hmm
and the one died, and the other churned the butter so much that he got himself out. Like that's kind of like the
Yeah.
representation of your time and place in that moment, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, I love
For
it.
sure.
And so you catch up with your bills in September, and then where did the agent business go from there?
So, I mean, the rest of the year was decent. And then, so something I missed in this story is, before I lost my house, I had borrowed $10,000, me and my ex, because we thought, from my parents, to try to keep this house.
Mhm.
Um, which is like, I regretted for a while, and now it's like, well, who cares? But such an odd thing. At the like now, I just like can't even imagine doing that. But anyway, long story short, like I made enough money that the following year on Mother's Day, I was able to give my parents a check
Oh,
for. I know, it's like,
Jesus Christ. There's nothing better. No matter
yeah,
what you've accomplished,
yeah.
like that moment, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, it ended up being a check for 12 grand because it was 10 plus a couple that I had borrowed during the debit card roulette days. But yeah, man, I handed them a check for 12 grand, and it's like it was like the best 12,000 I'd ever spent. I didn't even think about, oh, I'm gonna miss that money. Like I didn't miss it at all. I was very happy to give that. So that happened, and then 2 months later, I get the most random text from the office manager that says, do you want to work with investors in San Diego? Now, I could have asked so many questions, but I didn't. I just said, I remember texting yes. And to this day, I mean, I think about how this one answer, yes, just changed my entire life. Could have changed his life. He ended up getting shit canned a few months later. So anyway, I say yes. A few days before the meeting, he tells me he's not going to be there, but I can just meet them. So I don't know what I'm walking into.
Dude.
I sit down. They say, "Hey, we got this. We've raised a little bit of money. We want to try to buy a house or two and flip them. And if we can like turn this into something where we're flipping a house or two every month, that would be amazing. Success would be 12 houses a year." And so I just go through this whole spiel, man. I'm like, yeah, we could do this. We got contractor relationships. We know these banks. Well, I'll get guys to bid for you at the auction because they had mentioned that was important to them. And I'm just like going on, and they go, okay, cool. Send us a proposal when you get home. And I just remember thinking, like, didn't I just propose everything right now? So I go home and I Google proposal template, and I find a Word doc. And so I download this template, and I still have it, man. I just like go through this whole proposal. This is what we're gonna do for them, and this is what it's all bullshit, man. So I send it off, and then I just don't hear from them all weekend, and I'm just like, ugh, I wonder, is this good? Is this bad? That they call me, I think on Monday, and they say, hey, we bought a house. We want you to meet us with the contractor that you always work with tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I know. So this is just ingenuity, man. I
Yeah.
call a bunch of people. I'm like, I need a contractor. And so one guy's name came up more than once, and his name was Greg. So I called Greg and I was like, hey, man, I don't know what this is, but it could be an opportunity for both of us. Like, let's meet at this house 30 minutes before. Let's bro out. Let's get to know each other. We're friends. We work together. Okay. So we do that. They show up at 9. We walk them through the whole house, just kind of going through the motions of like, oh, yeah, this is what we do to it. This is what you can do to add value. And so at the end, we're outside and they go, okay, we're going to be choosing an agent soon. We'll let you know. I go, okay. I get in my car. My phone rings. I can see in my rearview mirror that they're on their phone. It's them calling. I pick up. They go, hey, send us a listing agreement. So that one text turned into they ended up selling over 350 homes with me. So at the height of it, I sold 165 homes for them in 1 year. I had a team of 8 people that would drive these houses the night before and send us notes on them. I had 3 full-time assistants. One of them's job was just to put lock boxes on and off and take notes on the homes. I found 1 or 2 people, I think 2, that would bid at the auction for them. Another investor heard about what I was doing, so I ended up helping him sell 60 homes. And then so between those two, I basically got on the job training on how to flip homes, right? I saw over 400 flips. So then I saved a bunch of those commissions, started my own real estate brokerage, and started flipping homes with I literally started flipping homes with $40,000. Me and 2 other guys each put in 40,000. We bought a home for 120, sold it for like, I don't know, 150, 160. Now we each had 50 instead of 40. Then we went in on another one, right? Bought a $150,000 home, sold it for 200. Now we each have 60 to 70 each, and it just spiraled from there. Me and one of the other guys, now we just did deals together, right? So then it was like we each put in our 70, bought a home for 140, sold it for 200, right? Cool. Now we each have 100, and it's just kind of like spiraled. So, and then at the same time, I was kind of like inactively building this real estate brokerage. I wasn't really trying to. It was more a way to just kind of, I guess, save money, right? Like I'm doing this, like I don't need to pay a brokerage. So word of mouth just kind of went out, like that I had a brokerage or that I was selling, hundreds of homes. And so that attracted agents, and just that turned into, I almost can't tell this story without telling another story about saying yes. So
Sure. Tell it away.
so it's like 2013 or 14, must have been 14. The flipping is kind of drying out, right? All these institutional hedge funds are coming in. They're paying full price. They're paying full retail price. So I remember, so if I rewind back to 2008, I had an offer for an agent who's a listing agent who was in my office. I walk into his office and I go, hey, I got an offer on your listing. And he just looks at me and he goes, will you email it like it says in the MLS? And I was just like, this guy. So never forgot that. Fast forward to 2014, I just get the most random text from him, and it says, hey man, we should grab coffee sometime. Now my instinct, and I tell this story in my book, is having coffee with an asshole. My instinct was to say, no, we shouldn't have coffee, man. But for whatever reason, I said, all right, let's do it. Sure. Yes. So we have coffee. And I don't know, man. He just starts talking about, I still don't remember how this came up, but he starts talking about real estate teams and building teams by buying internet leads. And he's like, yeah, that's what so-and-so's doing. And for whatever reason, he had like looked at what everyone was doing, was just like telling me all this stuff, right? And he tells me, "Oh, you should check out this event and these coaches in Dallas." So I I end up finding myself like signing up for this event in Dallas because I want to go and find out more about this. And at the event, um, Hal Elrod, who wrote Miracle Morning, is one of the keynote speakers. Great speech if anyone listening hasn't heard it or doesn't know him. So at the end of the event, I see him checking out of the hotel. He's got a name tag on. He lives in the same city as me. At the time, I lived in Temecula. Nobody listening probably lives in Temecula, right? It's just north of San Diego. I go, that's random. He lives in the same city as me. So when I get home, I just hit him up on social and I go, hey, would be cool to grab lunch. He calls me, tells me he's doing an event in San Diego. And I didn't want to go. I really didn't want to go. But I signed up. I was like, sure, man. So I buy a ticket on the day of. I really don't want to go. I dragged myself there. It turned out to be an amazing event, made some of the greatest relationships of my life. So I'm sure that's how I'm on this podcast, right? I always like to go like, how many events back can I tie this to, right? I could tie it to saying yes to coffee in 2014, but then that might not have been significant if I hadn't walked that offer in 2008. Sorry, man, that was a long ass lead up to just say that I ended up building a real estate team based on going to that conference. And I mean, I had like 50 agents at my brokerage and I sold it in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah.
So you have a similar tendency to me, is that every time I lead up to doing something, I say, man, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then my fiance now, we say, well, every time that's happened, you come home and you're so excited and you met this person that meets that person. And do you happen to know who Justin Donald is?
I do.
Okay. So I had Justin Donald on the podcast like 2 years ago, and I'm like the quintessential like super connector. That's what they call me. Like, but my entire life, I've never figured out how to monetize this ability that I know everybody on the planet. And Justin, I asked him because he was somewhat like me, and he wrote me this long email. He took time; it was amazing. And he was like, "Well, the short answer is you're going to hate me. You don't." He's like, "The second thing is you just have to keep showing up for yourself." And somebody's going to provide value in that. And I look at your story and I'm like, there's so many opportunities that could have not happened, but they did. And so the question that you have to ask yourself, right, for anybody that's listening out there, is how many times you probably wanted to go the other way, but you said yes anyway, and you were there, right? And that's kind of my joke, is like, 90% of the game is just being there.
Yeah. So many times, man. So
what are you doing now? So you sold the brokerage. What are you doing now besides writing a book?
So it's so funny, man. Like literally, all right. So I'm just like, I don't even know where to start. So the company that bought mine 2 years ago, I retained some equity in it. As of maybe this month, they're going out of business. So they gave me my company back. Just insane. So
let me get this straight. Because I, by the way, I just walked away from buying a brokerage like 3 weeks ago. Just so we're clear. So I've been through that process. We're buying an HVAC plumbing company right now. We'll close in like 30 days. So I'm very familiar with the scenario. So let me get this straight. They paid you a lot of money.
Yes.
And then they just gave it back to you because they don't want to deal with it anymore.
They gave it. I'm trying to think of how much I can say.
I know. I want you to be careful.
Yeah. Let's just say they paid me. They bought a bunch of us and they paid all of us almost everything they owed us.
Okay.
But that little amount that they still owe is enough for them to be like, okay, we'll give you your assets back.
Here's the bigger question. Do you want your asset back?
I do. I do. So
But you made peace that it was gone,
I
and so
did.
it comes back, but you're a different person now 2 years later.
So, okay. So, right. Okay. So selling a business sounds cool, right? It sounds fun. But right after I did it, I had some regrets, man.
Mhm.
I felt like I sold my family, um, sold my friends, which is weird because like I still worked with them. I still had the equity piece, right? But there was always this part of me that was like, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't done that. So, I mean, sometimes I'm just like, sometimes I feel like life is just almost too like unbelievable. Like, what are the chances? Like, of all the scenarios that would have played out, I don't think them going out of business and giving me my asset back would have ever been the one that played out
So
in my head.
without sharing too much, because I don't want to get you in trouble. Do you have anything that besides the market's been crazy the last 2 years? Is there anything they did in the management style, or was it just bad timing for them and kind of the sectors changing?
Um, so I know that we can't disparage each other. So
Of
they
course.
will say that it was the market,
Okay.
and
Fair enough.
I
That
will most
answers it.
likely.
That answers it right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, noted. So what's exciting, right? It's funny that you talk about this because we're buying a company from a guy who's been in the space for 16 to 65.
Wow.
And I think about this on a daily basis, like that I have to go to work every day to right. But then I got this email. So by the way, I live in Texas currently. We live in an RV most of the year. I'm moving up there in a month. But I've been flying back up there because he doesn't talk on the phone. He's hard of hearing. So I have to fly up there if I want something like
Okay.
tangible. On the second trip up there, I got home, I landed back. He sent me an email. He said, Austin, for the first time, he's been in the process of selling the business for 3 years. He said, in the process of this time, for the first time, I know that I'm selling it to the person that cares as much as I do and is going to continue my legacy. You can't put a price tag on that feeling.
Hmm.
When I saw that email, I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm right where I need to be. I mean, I can't even explain to you how amazing he's been. But then it hit me. I was up there 2 weeks ago where he introduced us as the new owner. And like he hadn't told everybody.
Yeah.
And like I met the tech and he's like, hey, this is your new owner. And I'm like, and like this feeling of like
Yeah.
29 people now have me, their family, I'm responsible. And it's like, man, this process, like starting a business and like all that, but like buying an existing business, selling a business, like there's so many more layers of emotion around that situation. It's
There
very
there is,
complex.
because I mean, think about it. If you build this business and you don't have a family feel and you're not involved and you're not engaged with their hopes and dreams, right? There's a lot of emphasis right now on like building your vision and then having everyone follow your vision, and it's like, no, dude. Like the best book on this is Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. It's like, no, if you ask your people what their dreams are and what dreams they're chasing and help them achieve those things, and they will feel engaged and involved and they won't want to leave. But once again, on the flip side, once you build that, they're not going to feel like, oh cool, you sold me out to this person and now I'm supposed to, it's just not the same, man. So there was a few people that I did tell that it was happening, and I I made sure that they knew that like I was still there for them, and that wouldn't change, and that went over well. There was a few people that I just naively thought, oh, they won't care that much, and they cared the most. So yeah, I mean, I told everyone after that did it after me. I was like, dude, you have to tell everybody. You have to.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to. You
Yeah.
have to. Are you still doing investing too, or where are you at with that?
Yes and no. I mean, definitely kind of on the
Yeah,
sidelines at the moment,
100%. 100%.
just for obvious reasons.
So I have a theory. I've coached enough people and talked to enough humans. when you come from where you came from and your back's up against the wall for so many years and you're just surviving, when things are starting to go well, I almost think that's a scarier time
Oh yeah.
than when your back's up against the wall because you're just waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you? Do you remember like thinking, oh, this is going way too good, when is it going to stop?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I'm past that now because I think I think within, so I think it was 2017, I started a charity organization locally. And I think it was around the last few years that I really started to realize like, okay, man, like you've helped enough people in life, like you're never going to be homeless, right? You're not going to be sleeping on a couch, or if you need to sleep on a couch, you'll always have a couch to sleep on. Like that was a good feeling of like knowing that, okay, you know, you've helped enough people, like you don't have to worry about losing everything again and being homeless again. And yeah, the first few years you're just like, this isn't gonna last forever. I mean, like when does this end? When does this end? I remember working with those investors, man. Like, when are they firing me? Right?
When are
Like,
they going to figure me out?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, because every year it was like we want to pay less per home because we're selling more homes, right? It was just like it was always a conversation about money, and then me having been poor was like, okay, you can pay me a little bit less, right? So yeah, man, just always wondering when they were gonna like, yeah, hire someone else or whatever. And trust me, they thought about that, right? Like, oh, we could bring in an in-house person and just pay them $4,000 a month to list these homes. You know, they didn't realize all the things that we had going on. So, but yeah, I did fear that for quite a while. Yeah.
I believe that everybody has a book inside them, whether or not it gets published or not. But if you don't write the book, it'll get written by somebody else. So
Yeah.
when did you start thinking of the idea of publishing a book?
7 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was
Yeah.
the initial concept that you had around?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because I tell this story kind of in the book, but you know, 7 years ago, I thought that the concept was going to be a book about becoming more than just a real estate agent. That was going to be the title, more than just a real estate agent. Because I remember waking up at, I remember a lot. I guess everything revolves around birthdays, right? But my 38th birthday, I remember thinking like, it was before I'd done the charity thing. I just remember thinking like, dude, you're 38 years old. What are you going to be remembered for? Oh, he was a real estate agent. Cool. You know, and real estate agent like doesn't have the best reputation always. So I thought that that was the book that I was going to write. And I'm so glad I didn't write it, man, because it was going to be like geared towards real estate agents, but kind of like personal development, goal setting, becoming more. Um, you know, as luck would have it, I started going down this like personal development journey again, probably around 2014. Um, and I went to events and I just like, I would leave these events with these journals with these notes written down, right? And like inspirational stuff, and it'd be keynote speakers, and you'd take some notes. And I would just always end up throwing the journal on a shelf and not really looking at it ever again. And so, you know, around that time, I just decided to start like, I thought like, well, what event would I want to go to? And I started trying to design an event that I would want to go to. I would want to leave with more than just inspirational quotes, right? I would want to make a plan. I would want to take some actions. So I put together this small little thing with like 10 to 15 people in my living room, just friends. And I didn't think much of it, but it was life changing for a few of them. And then the next year I did it and I invited some more friends. So then it was like maybe 20 people, 25 people. And then the next year it was my real estate team. And so last year was the first year that I just like put one post on social media and was like, hey, I'm opening this up to the public. Anyone want to come? I had 53 people come. again, just people are like setting these life changing goals and they're taking action right there at the event. One lady, so I don't want to ruin the surprise, but I do something to where everyone like takes an action right then and there. One lady comes back, we're just like, hey, who took what actions did you take? She stands up, she says, I called my boss, I told him I'm working part-time starting right now because I want to follow my dream. Inside I was like, holy shit, are you sure you want to do that? Like, whoa. One of our friends, he stood up and was like, I decided I'm starting a family. And you should have seen his fiance like look up at him like, oh. So that was in December. February, he comes home, there's a box on the table, he opens the box, there's a note on top, it says, congratulations on crushing all your goals this year. Underneath there's a positive pregnancy test. That's like the best story ever. So where am I going with this? At my event, I decided, oh, this is the book. This is the book. So because it's not just real estate related, right? I want to help everybody. And one of the I always get feedback after the event. One of the biggest questions I got was like, hey, this was great. Would have loved to know why we did some of these things, why this works. And so that was the idea for the book, Best Version Ever. And the whole idea is that your life's purpose is to become your best version ever. And that's not any finish line that you ever reach. It's something that it's milestones all along the way, and you're always becoming.
People ask me when I go on other podcasts, like, who's your hero? And I'm like, me 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, it's the truth. It's like, it's hard to dream when you're in okay, first of all, it's not hard. It's impossible to create a vision for your life in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that you do with clients, or the first time you're stepping into personal development, is just, I use the analogy for a client this morning. You ever remember the first time you were on a paddleboard? Yeah. That's your mindset when you're just getting into personal development. And then, a couple months go by, you do some work, like it starts to stabilize, you get, that's the game. And so it's like, if you're not seeking that version of yourself, like there's really nothing else that matters.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny that you bring up real estate agents. I coach a lot of real estate agents, and my hope for them is to realize that there is something more than just being an agent. Like, I don't want you to be the guy that's 65 in the office that watches all of his clients get really successful for 40 years and has nothing to show for it. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to invest in so many properties. You can buy one property every 2 years. It doesn't matter. At least it's something, right?
Yeah.
And so John Maxwell, which I've read almost all of his books, says the only problem with writing a book is the moment that it goes into print, you're a different person that wrote the book already.
Totally.
Right. And have you like struggled with like having it in the paper and like, oh my God, this is a thing?
Yeah. I mean, you're exposing yourself to the whole world, right? Like and one of the best quotes that I kept like rereading during the whole process of writing it is like, a book is never finished, only abandoned, right? A book is something to that effect. A book is never completed. It's just abandoned. Like you could always write it forever. I just like a few days ago, I opened my book because I was like, let me try to take this in as someone who's about to buy it. And I started getting like all like scared, like, oh my gosh, is this going to bore someone? Like, am I going to lose someone here? And then I had to remind myself, like, no, dude, you've been fucking reading this for a year. Like this has been nonstop. You've been seeing this constantly. Like people are going to see this for the first time. So yeah, man, like there's already a few things where I was like, oh, I should have written that differently. Oh, I should provide some clarity there. And then I'm just like, dude, stop.
Have you recorded the Audible book yet?
I did.
Okay. Well, something to think about. You don't have to go back because it's probably already done. One of the things I'm loving they're doing now, they did it with the Who Not How, and they're doing like interviews with the author at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
I love that because it's like context, right?
I thought that was really cool. I should have looked into that more. But
well, no, but either you could record them on the side and create QR codes. I just think it's nice to kind of hear like, what were you thinking when you wrote that? Kind of like, it's like an integration piece, almost like kind of framed. But
I think David Goggins was the first one that I actually heard that way.
Yeah, he just scares me. But yes, no, I'm excited to just dig into his new book. So if people want to find out about you, they want to buy the book, they want to find the book, how would they do that?
Yeah, just go to bestversionever.com. Pretty simple. Or just search that on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, I'm buying it as soon as we get off.
Awesome,
man. I thank you so much for your story, man. And I just want to add an exclamation point. Even though I'm not a part, anybody that I've ever met from Front Row Dads is just, I mean, best humans ever. And so, I think life is kind of who you surround yourself with. And I don't know if there's a better group out there for dads who are looking to level up their things. So if you're interested, please reach out, because everybody's just top notch. So awesome. Well, guys, if you got some value from this episode, send it to your friend, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.